Rather than to just do an occasional story here and here, I think journalism has suffered from the story, snapshot, snapshot, snapshot approach. I'd be curious to see if you could choose a topic and run with it and become the go-to place on that topic. Because that's what gets people's attention, is not a story. A story is a blip on a radar screen, it goes away. But if there's something that isn't being covered well and you get to be the go-to place and you produce a number of pieces on that topic, I don't know necessarily how that would fit with your funding model, but maybe rather than fund a story, you'd be funding a reporter to be covering a topic over time and produce at least X number of stories, or maybe doing a blog on it or something. But that's what gets people's attention. If there's something that's going to, on a recurring basis, get you on their radar screen, and it's not just going to be about, whoa, spot us, cool revenue model for news. Nobody outside the business is going to care about that. But if it's something like, wow, there's this major problem with this water filtration plant, take some part of that isn't being covered well elsewhere and own it. Be the go-to place for it. And that'll serve a couple of benefits. That will establish your credibility in the minds of people who might be wondering about your credibility. It's also search visibility. And right now, search visibility is king for anything related to news. If people can't find it, it doesn't exist.
Right.
And search visibility is what's going to bring in the audience of people who haven't already heard of you. Yeah, you definitely need to get it into Google News, Yahoo News, there are a few other major news aggregators. That's going to bring you a lot of traffic. And then you need to make sure that when you are covering whatever this chunk of something you're going to own is, all your headlines are search optimized, lead paragraphs are search optimized, so that you're using the words that people who might be interested in this topic but aren't yet aware of this story or angle, the words that they would plug into Google or Google News or Google Blog search is going to lead them right to your story. And it feels a little mechanical. I think it's the Center for American Progress puts out a lot of research reports. They just put out one, which is fabulous, about the transmission grid, the electric transmission grid in this country. I found out about it through AdWords. Because I was doing a Google search, and then I saw, whoa, I didn't know that they had this new report out on this. And, so I went and checked it out, and it was a good report. There are a lot of things you guys can do with Spot Us. Just make sure you're not falling into the same mindset traps that a lot of journalists and journalism organizations have, which is the focus on story. That's like saying, I run a bakery, and my job is to sell cake boxes. Okay, the box is the story. It's just a way to package the information. It's not what people are really going there for. Entertainment stories, I think, are fabulous, especially since you have such a great local music and culture scene. And I know places like the Oakland Tribune and was it East Bay Express and they're covering a fair amount of it. But oh my God, there's this new site out called Groover. Have you seen it? Where you can look up what's happening tonight.
Yeah, it's great.
I would love to see somebody do like an instant review component of Groover, and I think there's room for local content providers, because Groover's all one big mashup, and it's got an API. And I think if you had some people who's like, all right, my job is I'm going to use Groover, I'm going to go out and find a gig, and I'm going to like tweet live what's happening at the gig or something like that. Is that going to bring traffic into Groover? Yeah.
That's a good point.
So there are a whole lot of options if you're not just thinking narrative, beginning, middle, end story. Well, look, okay, a newspaper has always run a ton of stuff that's not journalism, journalism per se. I honestly think a lot of people in the news business have, in a way, overestimated the importance of journalism even in their own organizations. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but look at what pays the bills. Okay, yeah, you've got the sports scores, you've got the horoscopes, you've got recipes, you've got a lot of just like slice of life vignettes that are going on. Photography, a lot of things that aren't story. And are they done with a journalistic mindset and ethic? yes, usually, except maybe the horoscopes. From the perspective of people who have been enjoying newspapers for so long, a lot of it is not the news. A lot of it is having a sense of connection to what's going on. And especially since what happens in this area is so much in the moment. Impromptu, live performances that happen. And it takes somebody who knows where those in crowds are to bring it out to the larger community, and not just the information about it, but the context. Why should I care about that? What's so cool about this? There's so many interesting things going on with the community organizations that, again, with them, it's their own network of in-crowds. There's so many community organizations here that have a radius that they work in that's maybe like, a mile and a half or 2 miles. They're like doing, homeless, assistance, or transportation assistance for the elderly, or, a lot of church-based groups. And they're just so focused on doing what they have to do that telling everybody else about it is the last thing on their mind. And a lot of times they're distrustful of getting too much attention from the outside, for various reasons. So, and there may be language barriers, cultural barriers, all sorts of stuff. So it would be a matter of establishing trust with them as well. It might be easier to do that through kind of smaller dispatch type updates rather than doing a traditional narrative story. Because so much of doing a traditional narrative story isn't really reporting. It's about making editorial choices, choosing your angle, choosing your slant, choosing how you're going to position stuff, and it is never going to look to the sources the way it looks to you. Oh, I think mobile is crucial. What's amazed me, especially being around here, I mean, we have a fair number of homeless and underemployed people in Boulder. And, it's like Boulder, yeah, you figure that it's a pretty upscale place, and there's going to be a lot of people with cell phones. Here, I mean, everybody. I mean, people who are just like, dragging themselves on homemade wheelchairs down the street begging for $10. They all have cell phones. And I can understand that, because if you're in a situation like that, the biggest obstacle facing you is the isolation you're in. People act like they don't see you. And you can't get places. And you need to be able to get in touch with, where am I going to get a place to stay tonight? Where is there some food available? And I haven't investigated it yet, but I know in a lot of cities there are text messaging based services that various social service agencies put out, to put people in touch with resources. That is a whole other communication network that might be a venue for Spot Us.
We went to the
Pick something. And pick whatever, frankly, you have the most energy for. Because, yeah, it's nice to kind of let a community do something, but they'll be kind of amorphous until they get some guidance. Whatever you guys have energy for, guide it that way first, because then it'll create its own rewards and it'll make it more fun to keep doing it. And fun counts. And whenever something becomes a grind, that's a problem. That's going to become an inherent obstacle. And journalism culture is so bad that, well, you just push through it. No, if it sucks, hurt, right? Yeah. If the process sucks, it doesn't matter how hard you push, it's still going to suck. So pick something you really like, own it for a bit. You don't have to own it forever. You don't have to be the go-to place about, some aspect of the Oakland Police Department forever. Own it for a little while, enough to get you more search engine visibility, because they're the gods. But what do you make out of dead Smurfs?
What?
Soylent Blue.